And joining us tonight, Dr. Ezekiel Emanuel. He is chair of the Department of Clinical Bioethics at the National Institutes of Health. And John Donvan wanted to be sure that I mentioned both to you and to our audience that in his non-medical opinion, the young lady who gave her kidney away in the first segment, Mrs. Buonsante, is absolutely sane, indeed was motivated in part by the fact that her mother had been on a list waiting for a liver transplant for a long, long time. But it does raise the issue of how are we sure that all the people who look at this on the internet and say, yeah, that's something I might want to do, that they are sane?
Well, it raises a serious question of what the motivations are, but clearly, at least in some cases, the motivations do appear to be purely altruistic, and it's something that generally in society we want to encourage, altruistic behavior. Can
we be sure that things are being done for the right reasons? In other words, what procedures are in place by the surgeons who are going to do the transplant?
Well, I don't know in all cases, and I don't know in this case. I know that at the National Institutes of Health, we actually do have a psychiatrist visit and interview and assess all the potential donors.
What's your view of this? I mean, are you somewhat disturbed by having this appear on the internet, or do you think that it's inevitable and we might as well go with the flow?
I think the internet is a sort of bit of titillation red herring here. I think the issue is, do we want this kind of directed donation? And I think, as John Donovan points out, on the one hand, you have this value of liberty and altruism that you want to encourage. We think organ donation is a good thing. We promote it among family members, and we wish more people would do it when their relatives die and we could get more cadaveric organs. On the other hand, there is the value of fairness and the fact that we want people in need to get it and not based upon their socioeconomic status or other endearing characteristics. And I think one of the big questions here, which we don't know the answer to, is this going to lead to more organs being donated? Or is somehow, if we have more directed donation, we're actually in some way going to end up with less?
You've done a great job of restating what the problem is. Now I'd like to hear from the ethicist as to what he believes the answer is.
Well, I think actually the most important thing here is to emphasize fairness. But I do think, and here is an empirical question which we don't have the data for, if it led to fewer organs being donated, because some people come in voluntarily to give them, but others then worry about the system, worry about the preference, then it would be a bad thing. If, on the other hand, we actually see a net increase in organ donation, then I think it would be a good thing to promote.
I mean, quite clearly, where the organs are harvested from the deceased has no way of knowing who is going to be the beneficiary.
Right.
But if I'm the donor and I'm going to give up one of my kidneys or part of my liver, why do I not have the right, as I would have with any other possession of mine, to designate who the recipient is going to be?
Well, again, I think partly that issue is if it had no effect on the whole rest of the system, no one would worry about it. It would be a private kind of contract. What we are worried is that it may not be neutral as far as the whole rest of the system.
Well, all right.
If your donation undercut other people being willing to donate or willing to donate the organs of their dead relatives, that would not be a net bad thing for the system, and other patients would suffer.
Let me rephrase the question. Nobody suggests for a moment that I can't give money to a charity of my choice. I can give it to precisely whomever I please, right? As long as it's a legitimate charity. And no one would suggest that what I'm obliged to do is to put the money into a pool so that those who need the money most get it first. Why is that a bad analog?
Oh, I think it's a bad analog because we have all sorts of social structures that pay for and support medical care, both in terms of research and in terms of health care delivery. And we think that the proper distribution of health care resources should be based upon need, not based upon whether I like you more or I like you less. And therefore, we think that fairness is the most important criteria. As John Donovan's segment showed, in the 1960s there was this sort of choosing who gets it in Seattle, and there was a very big uproar in the country about that because it didn't seem fair. It seemed only like useful people, attractive people would get, and not solely based upon medical need.
Almost everything in our society is based upon the fact that some people are wealthier than others, some people are more attractive than others. Again, where the issue is, it's my liver, I ought to be able to decide who gets it. You explain to me why that is somehow wrong.
Well, we actually don't accept the fact that money should buy everything. We decry the fact that people with more money seem to be able to get into college when they have worse scores, that merit, ability should determine that. This whole problem would be solved if we got more organs from relatives who were willing to donate organs from their dead relatives. The fact is that about 800,000 people a year die who are under 65 years of age, and what we need to do is get more organs from those people who unfortunately die. That would actually eliminate this ethical problem and make it a lot easier to actually have a lot more people living healthily and not requiring organs, not dying on the organ donation list. That's the key change that we really need.
Excellent point. I'm glad you made it. Thank you very much. And that's our report for tonight. I'm Ted Koppel in Washington. For all of us here at ABC News, good night.
This has been a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source.